Hello, welcome to the show. Happy you're here with me today. We're going to hear from our announcer guy real quick with an announcement. Then Ralph M. Rivera and I are going to discuss an editing distinction. We are going to leak some information about next week's episode. And we're going to make an announcement about Marcus DePaula's podcast audio lab in Nashville, which is going to be February 1st of 2020. And then the main part of the episode, I'm going to talk about my recent daily goodies. And of course, the daily goodies are those little blog posts I write every day, and you can get them in your email. So definitely go to podcastengineeringschool.com and you can sign up to get your daily goodies. You can get them daily or a weekly roundup email, which is kind of cool. All right, well, let's hear from our announcer guy. He's here. He pulled up in his spaceship, so he's waiting in the yard, and he has his microphone with him. I'm going to give him the sign and tell him to go ahead. I think he mentioned that there's not many announcements this week, but okay, go ahead, brother.
The next Podcast Engineering School program starts on January 14th.
Wow. All right. That was very short, but yes. Okay. That's the next Podcast Engineering School semester. Happens January 14th. So Ralph M. Rivera, welcome, my brother.
Thanks for having me on, badass.
Yeah. Oh, badass. Yes. So we're going to cover this little mini topic really quick because you had some interesting thoughts about it. There was actually an alumni of Podcast Engineering School who in the Podcast Engineering School private Slack group asked a question about including the word badass in an episode. And is that explicit? And is that a problem? Right, Ralph? That's where it started?
Yeah. So we'll call her E just to preserve a little bit of anonymity. And her exact question was, can anyone tell me about the explicit category and if I should mark a podcast explicit for the term badass being said twice throughout an episode?
And your first response was beautiful, I thought. Read it.
What I said initially was, if it can be said on broadcast television, it isn't explicit.
Right.
That was kind of what I went with. But as time went on, I started percolating on that thread because other people jumped in and started making comments. And one of the things that occurred to me is that podcasting is about storytelling ultimately. And to your point, when we were talking privately before starting to record, audio engineering should serve the storytelling. So we talk a lot about ums and ahs in part of the, recording process and whether ums and ahs and breaths should be taken out or left in. And that's a huge conversation amongst podcasters. In fact, at the last couple of conferences that we were at, Podcast Movement, Podfest, there were actual sessions that were explicitly about ums and ahs, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I have had a complete 360 on my feelings of ums and ahs. And I'm going to get to the point back that's relevant to this whole badass thing. But I used to be in camp no no ah many years ago, old Ralph.
Okay.
And it wasn't until old Ralph started having this conversation with Chris Curran, the wise sage of Podcast Engineering School, that I said, well, I just take out all the ums, I take out all the ahs, and I take out all the breaths. And you so wisely said, yeah, but that's part of being human. Part of being human is that you have these little nuances. You breathe. That's what humans do. And you asked me to go listen to a couple of songs. And you said, listen to how many times they breathe. And I don't remember who they were. It was like Whitney Houston or Mariah Carey, but the really famous songs. And I was just shocked at how often they would just, take a breath, to continue too. Loud breaths. Yeah. To continue singing. And I thought, wow, that's really, I had never thought of that. So I think that the technical aspect of that is such that people may disconnect it from the narrative part of that. So you can take out the ums, you can take out the ahs and the breaths, but should you? So podcasting is ultimately about storytelling. And you should tell the story.
Storytelling also means just delivering of content as well. Content, yeah.
Yeah, right. And if your story is better served with those ums and ahs and breaths because it's adding a layer of humanity, then that's a good thing. And one of the things, getting back to this whole badass conversation, is that if badass, if that word serves the narrative, then leave it in. If it doesn't serve the narrative, then take it out. Whether or not it's explicit, to me, is important, but also tangential, because the explicit tag really affects mostly countries that aren't going to be, listening to this podcast. They're, Middle Eastern countries that they will ban an entire podcast if only one episode is tagged as explicit. And the number of countries that do that is going down. But that notwithstanding, is the use of the word badass lending itself to a better narrative? And I started thinking about George Carlin. George Carlin, he was attacked once because someone said, you curse too much. And his response was, well, I'm not cursing too much or too little. The curses are kind of the spice in the stew that I'm cooking. So I found that really enlightening and really a brilliant idea, that he was sculpting his language to tell a narrative. So what I would tell E is, well, what tells your story better? Does that word badass, does that service the narrative, or does it not service the narrative? And then consequently, someone jumped in on the thread and said, well, I would just take it out. And I found that to be dangerous, because the person that said take it out, they don't have any context for the narrative. They didn't hear the source files. They don't know what the story's about. So for them to make a narrative decision or to suggest a narrative decision based on not having any context for what that story is a little dangerous in my mind.
Yeah, it's a little quick reaction style comment without knowing the whole story. I mean, I just was picturing in my mind, imagine Andrew Dice Clay doing all his old funny jokes, but then cutting out all the curse words. It would not work, period.
Well, yeah, but also if you know enough about Andrew Dice Clay and you've seen him being interviewed and having conversations, you know that that's not necessarily how he talks all the time. It's crafted. It's he's telling a story. It's a performance that he's giving, and like Carlin before him, he's using language, in this case, bad language, filthy language, however you want to describe it, but he is spicing up his stew, his recipe with that language. So I would encourage E to keep that in there if it makes her story better. I would not make that a technical aspect, because you and I, before we started recording, we were talking about this and we were trying to draw kind of a mental line between what is in the service of the narrative and what is in the service of audio engineering. And they're two different things that are, related, but the way that they're related is different based on, people's opinion and people's own subjective view of the story that they're trying to tell through a podcast.
Right.
So
that's why I thought it's really good to mention that, all the audio engineering and the podcast engineering that I teach at my school and that we talk about on this show, it's a technical process. Like we talk about how to remove ums, but we don't say that you should, because the decision whether you should remove anything, that's a content decision. And the content is ultimately the most important thing. And that's what a lot of people get wrong about me. They think I'm this maniac audio technical guy who I just only care about audio quality. That's not true. I'm not an idiot. I know that the content is the most important thing, and the audio quality is just not far behind in terms of importance. But the audio engineering aspects of production should serve the content aspect. So so when you learn how to remove ums, it doesn't mean you should just take every piece of audio and remove every It doesn't mean that. Like, you might know how to remove ums, but it doesn't mean you should. And ultimately, I think this is part of your point, that whatever serves the content, you're calling it a story, but I'll call it content. Whatever serves the content is what it should be, right?
Right. I agree with everything you said, except the part where you said you're not an idiot. That part I don't agree with. And by the way, let me just take a moment to blow a little smoke up your butt. One of the great things about Podcast Engineering School, especially being an alumni of Podcast Engineering School, is that there is this very vibrant Slack community where people can talk about stuff, not just the hardcore engineering, not just the hardware, not just the microphones, not just the plugins, not just the DAWs, but people are talking about their content and they're asking suggestions and they're talking about how to, craft their content. And it's a very vibrant community. And the fact that this question isn't about audio engineering specifically, although it does tie back in a way, I think is really telling about how great this community is. So that is the last time I'm going to compliment you during this session.
And I just was thinking, really soon we're going to kick off a new client challenge, which I'm not even going to tell you what that is yet. But anyway, I'm looking forward to doing some cooler things within the Podcast Engineering School alumni closed group, because a lot of people are a lot of alumni are editors and they want to have more clients, and so we're gonna do something fun there. And also I want everyone to mark your calendars. Okay, get out a pen right now, because next week's episode is with the Marcus DePaula.
Very exciting.
From Franklin, Tennessee. But guess who is going to be mixing and editing the conversation part of it? Who?
Can I guess?
Guess who? I'm not asking you. I'm asking them.
I want to guess.
Yeah, it's Ralph M. Rivera. So
that's right.
This is going to be exciting. I can't wait to hear this audio.
Can I share something with you? And I don't want anybody else to know this except for you and me.
Okay.
But Marcus DePaula, my good friend, actually made fun of me because when I said to him, Chris is going to let me edit the episode that you were on, he said, no, that would never happen. There is no universe in which Chris Curran would let you edit one of his episodes. And I have to tell you, Chris, I'm sorry to spring this on you, but I'm so excited at the quality of what I've produced that I've actually brought a little sample with me. Do you want to hear it?
Okay. Wow.
All right. So this is a preview. Sorry to throw this at you unannounced. So go ahead and let me play the preview.
Yeah, play the clip.
All right. Well, I am speaking through my beloved
SM7B. I'm a huge Shure fan.
I've got it attached to a Samson. I think it's a 38-inch boom arm, and I've actually wired the Mogami
mic cable inside it with some low-profile
connectors because I do soldering and stuff.
Oh, this episode's going to be great.
That is audio engineering genius.
Wow. That was Marcus DePaula. He sounds very dynamic in terms of his pitch. Wow.
Yes. He's a true artist.
What does he have, like a dial on the side of his neck? He just
Yep, two, one on each side.
Oh, dude! Now he's gonna really kill you. You know that, and he's bigger than you, my friend.
Oh, much bigger.
He will stomp you. All right. Well, Ralph M. Rivera, I'm glad we got to talk about that topic and really distinguish. I think it's a wonderful message, and I don't give it enough. I don't think. I may have never said it because I just think it's common sense that all the audio engineering details and technical stuff we talk about is only there to serve the end product, which is the content, which is the message, which is the story. And that's it. That's it. But it doesn't mean it's not important. It just means that's what it serves. And so we always have to, that has to be our paradigm. We have to be in the paradigm of content, but then do our technical audio production. So great point, man. I'm glad we got to talk about this.
Oh, by the way, can I mention something to you?
Sure.
So Marcus is doing this thing called Podcast Audio Lab, which is like an 8-hour intensive workshop. He's doing it in Nashville. And if anybody's interested, you can go to, let me pull up the address, which I should have had
Go to
ready.
www.
That's right. Dub.
No, HTTP.
Wait, hold on. Let me say it like Marcus. You have to go to it's www.podcastaudiolab. And that is going to be an 8-hour workshop, I think intensive. If you go to that address, you'll get information. It's on February 1st from 8:30 to 4:30, and I think it's like $300. But if you go sign up right now, you're gonna get $60 off.
Cool. That's in Nashville on February 1st, and the website is again
podcastaudiolab.com. Yes, and I'm going to be there.
I was going to say that was my next question.
If anybody wants to come shake hands with the Ralph, is it the or the?
Well, you accept either one, so
I do.
Yeah, I prefer the.
You know, why don't we say the Ralph M. Rivera? Just make it longer. It's almost a new year, Chris. Let's change it up a little bit.
Yeah. Is Marcus?
So I'll be there helping Marcus with lifting heavy things. That's going to be my job.
Is Marcus upset that just your stunning personality and amazing good looks are going to be the major draw to his event?
Well, not so much that. I think what's bothering Marcus more than anything is that I'll be wearing a T-shirt for my school called Podcast Engineering Academy. So we're still trying to hit with that one.
Did you ever get that URL?
No, I should. Do you remember a band named Danzig?
Yeah, of course.
They're like a heavy metal kind of band. They have a song called Mother.
Yeah.
And I guess the lead singer of the band just loved this song. And there was like a 20-year period where every single album they put out had this song on it. Really? And it finally hit. Yeah.
I didn't know that because the second album, Lucifuge, that's a good one.
Yeah. So they had that song like for years. As a matter of fact, it was a running joke on MTV back. Kids, there used to be this thing called television. And there was a channel called MTV, which stood for Music Television. And the VJs on MTV would actually make fun of Danzig because they were like, they've released this song like 100 times and they finally hit with it.
Wow.
So that's me with Podcast Engineering Academy. I'm just going to keep swinging that bat to try to get some traction.
You should get the URL and then track if people actually go there.
That'd be fantastic.
All right, Ralph M. Rivera, the Ralph M. Rivera. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Okay, well, now let's move on to the Daily Goodies. And we're going to start with the Daily Goodie from September 13th, 2019. This is actually a Friday the 13th, so this was a little Friday the 13th trivia. And I rarely do this. Probably once every 3 months, I might put in a weird post that has nothing to do with audio. But anyway, the fear is very real. The fear of Friday the 13th is also called frigatriskaidekaphobia, or, if you didn't like that one, paraskividetriophobia. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's literally a phobia. It's the fear of Friday the 13th. All right, let's move on. It's kind of funny, but all right, let's get into the audio controls within Auphonic. Well, you may have heard of Auphonic. It's a really cool, it's like a web app, but you can also buy their software and download it. They have a couple different types of software, but the Auphonic that most people use is you upload your episode to Auphonic and you set your processing parameters, and then Auphonic processes your audio and levels it and does a bunch of things, and then you download the resulting file. It's really handy. A lot of people use it. But now for the past year and a half, there's advanced controls within Auphonic, which are really cool. So there's an adaptive leveler, which actually there always was, but the adaptive leveler will sort of level out people's voices. But now you can actually choose your dynamic range in terms of LUFs. Or LUs, loudness units. I think that's the more accurate way to say it. So, you can choose how dynamic you want your episode. And then you could choose your loudness target in terms of, LUFs again. And also you could filter the low frequencies, and you can do noise reduction, hum reduction. Anyway, there's a lot of audio controls within Auphonic that are pretty cool. So if you do use Auphonic, make sure you just take a look and browse those advanced controls, and you may want to mess with some of them. Okay, next Daily Goodie. being profitable as a podcast producer or editor. Okay, so if you're going to be a podcast editor or a podcast producer or engineer, and you're going to, have clients and charge money and earn money, you want to be profitable. So my suggestion is always with profitability, even regular businesses, you got to do the math. You got to sit down and think about what are you doing? How long do things take you? Like how many hours are you working? And then, what can you earn? What can you charge each client, or what can you charge for each episode? And you just got to sort of hack it out on paper and just throw a bunch of numbers around, and then, do the math in terms of what you'll make per year as well. Like if you charge X dollars per episode and you want to produce 10 episodes a week, what does that mean per year? And can you live off that money? So profitability is huge. A lot of people who are not familiar or they're new in business, they don't really think about profitability. They might look at what all the other podcast editors are charging and then just charge the same thing. Well, that might not work for you. So anyway, check it out. All right, next Daily Goody, the private Slack group for PES students and alumni. Ralph and I mentioned this. This is where we got the idea for that conversation, or the seed for that conversation started in the PES Slack group. And really I already said what it's about with Ralph. So it's just an awesome private community for Podcast Engineering School alumni, and it's really cool. And I mean, there's not a lot of nonsense that happens there either. A lot of times with Facebook groups, there's nutty people, or there's a bunch of nutty conversations or weird stuff, or sort of waste, other people wasting other people's time and stuff like that. It's not like that in our Podcast Engineering School group. Okay, because if there was, I'd have to lay down the hammer. Me and or Ralph. Just kidding, of course. All right, next Daily Goody. Audio sample rate. Well, this is one of the most fundamental things about digital audio is the sample rate. And the sample rate is how many snapshots or samples per second were taken of the original analog signal when converting that analog signal to digital. So it's like snapshots. It's like taking a picture. If I took a picture of you once per minute, so every minute I snap a picture, well, I'm going to miss a lot, right? Because within the minute, you could probably run to the bathroom and back within 1 minute, and we can look at those pictures later, and there's no pictures of you going to the bathroom. So we could take a picture of you once per second. That'd be better, because then we could see you leave the room to go to the bathroom or whatever. What a bad example, I'd go into the bathroom. Anyway, or we could take 100 pictures of you per second, and then we could run them. Well, actually, if it's 24 frames per second or 30 per second, that's kind of like video. Video is typically 30 frames per second. I think that's about the average. So if you took 30 samples per second, it'll sort of flow together like that. But with audio, with professional audio, we take, 48,000 samples per second or 44.1 thousand samples per second. So that's the sample rate, and it actually determines, your sample rate determines what's the highest frequency you can capture. So you just take the sample rate and divide it by 2, and that's the highest frequency you can capture. So for 48 kilohertz sample rate, you can capture audio up to 24 kilohertz. All right, next Daily Goody. Electro Voice RE20 microphone. Well, this is a great microphone. It's one of the greatest for broadcasting and podcasting. I actually use an RE20, and it's costs about $450. So in terms of podcast mics, it's one of the most expensive, but it's really great, and it sounds good on most everyone, and it's very rich sounding, very full sounding, and it's not the one that everyone loves the best on their voice, but as far as industry standards go, this is one of them, and it's a great mic. So anyway, the RE20, great mic. All right, next post here. Oh, it's the Podcasters Lounge, which, by the way, the Podcasters Lounge live stream, we're streaming now once a month. So go to the Podcasters Lounge Facebook group. Go on Facebook, Podcasters Lounge, join the group. And also on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel for Podcasters Lounge. Anyway, we do live streaming once a month. It's really fun. Okay, next daily goodie. Keeping your studio uncluttered. Yeah, keeping your studio nice and tidy, it seems to have a relaxing effect on your mind, you know? Whereas if your studio is just a complete mess with all kinds of crap strewn about everywhere, it sort of subconsciously creates a little bit of stress. So keeping things nice and tidy, it sort of almost tidies up your mind. It almost puts you at ease when things are a little more tidied up. And again, it's mostly subconscious, but anyway, and I asked in the post, like, what do you think? Do you think that's true? Is that true for you? So anyway, if you want to go comment on the post, feel free. Next daily goodie, Adobe Audition. Wow, well, this is a DAW that a lot of people love. It's definitely one of the best ones for podcast production. Although lately I've been saying it's probably the best one. And you know what? I'm going to take all that back right now because I'm tired of people asking me, why don't you use Adobe Audition? If you think it's the best one, why don't you use it? Well, the answer is because I don't need to use it. I use Reaper, which is awesome. And I have all kinds of third-party plugins that are way better than any plugins within Audition. So I don't need Audition. And I also don't like the $20 or $21 a month model. But here's the thing. Adobe Audition, yeah, it's great, but I'm tired of saying it's great because everyone, whatever. It's fine. It's okay. All right? It's not the greatest thing since sliced bread, okay? It's not perfect. Can you tell him? I'm just saying this to go the other way because I'm tired of saying that it's a good DAW. But anyway, it really is a good DAW. So Adobe Audition, there you go. All right, next daily goodie. A guest who can record his or her own audio locally, right? Isn't it great when you have a guest who is savvy enough to record his or her audio locally? Oh, it's such a great help. You know, it's the double ender. It's the host records their audio on their end, guest records their audio on their end. It's great. So I obviously, when I interview people on this show, most of my guests are able to do that. So I asked them to do that, and they do it. But for the average podcaster and the average podcast guest, they can't do this, and that's why we use services like Zencastr and Squadcast and all that. Which I still use those services in addition to the double ender because I like to be redundant and have backups. Anyway, the next daily goodie, we're speeding right through these. If your recording level is really low, okay, that's the daily goodie. If your recording level is really low, first of all, actually now, if you're recording in 32-bit float, it's not a big deal. Anyway, more on that later. I think I wrote a future daily goodie on that. 32-bit float, the amazing resolution. But anyway, if you're just recording normally like us mere mortals, you have to record your audio at a good level. If the level's too low, it's a problem because when you boost it up later, you're going to introduce a lot more noise. And I don't know if you can hear that plane flying around. Anyway, that was a little loud there. I wonder if you could hear that. Anyway, here's the thing. To get your recording level where it needs to be, you can look through your signal chain. So your signal path. So start with your microphone and you know, it might be plugged into an audio interface or a preamp or a mixer. And so then out of the mixer, maybe it goes to an interface, wherever. And then finally it gets into the computer and sometimes there's input level there in your computer. So all along your signal chain of your microphone, there's places where you can either boost or reduce the volume. And so if your level is really low, just follow the signal chain. And at each step, just boost up your level. And then, of course, do some test recordings. Now, I really simplified that. And of course, that's what the daily goodies are, right? Just simple little things to help you out and make you think or maybe solve a problem. Maybe a problem you didn't even know you had. But anyway, that's the idea with following your signal chain and gain staging and all that. Okay, next daily goodie, your post-production process. What steps are included in your current post-production process? So what do you do in post? After you record all the audio, and now you're going to go to the post-production, which might include mixing and plugins and editing, of course, and then, setting the final level and all that. What have you outlined your steps? Have you written it down? I actually encourage my students to do this because it really can shed a lot of light on your process, not only your processes, but the final product. So it's kind of enlightening to do that. If you haven't done it, I suggest it. And I also ask in this post, do you struggle with any particular processes, right? So maybe as you're writing out your process, maybe there's one of the steps in there that you're like, oh yeah, I can't stand this step. I hate it. I'm not good at it. I don't like it. I wish I could improve it, or maybe even wish you could outsource it, right? And then, of course, you can reflect on your post-production process and think if you want to remove any steps or add any steps. Maybe you don't use EQ or compression very much. Maybe you want to add that, right? So it's good to reflect on your process. Okay, and is this the last one? No, we got 2 more to go. Second to last daily goodie, not blindly using preset plugin chains. Okay, so here's the thing. A lot of different DAWs, especially Adobe Audition. You know what? I should get, the angel sound that Dave Jackson plays when he talks about the Heil PR40. I should get that whenever I say Adobe Audition, I should play the angel sound. Anyway, it's my day to rag on Adobe Audition. Of course, and I'm only kidding because it's a great DAW, of course. So, a lot of DAWs have preset processing. So, for instance, I think in Adobe Audition, I think there's a multi-band compressor and there's a preset called like radio disc jockey or something, or a radio voice, or a broadcasting preset. It's something to do with broadcasting or radio. And a lot of people, they apply that compressor to their voice, and that's it. They say, okay, I'm going to make myself sound like a broadcaster or a radio DJ. And they apply that effect, and that's fine. Maybe it's fine, but maybe it's not. So this is why the title of this daily goodie is not blindly using preset plugin chains. So you can use that processor, that broadcast or radio processor, but don't just apply it and then move on. And you should apply it and listen. Does it sound good? Maybe you need to adjust it a little bit. Maybe you need to add a little more of that effect, or maybe a little less of that effect, right? Maybe that multi-band compressor sounds good, but maybe you need to use a little more of it. Use it a little more aggressively. Or maybe it sounds good, but it's compressing it too much, so you back off on it. And of course, there's a lot of other parameters in a multi-band compressor that you can adjust. But the point is, presets are good starting points. So start from the starting point, but then you have to use your ears. And of course, if you start with a preset and change some of the settings, make sure you save that as a new preset. And then, of course, the next episode, you start with that preset. But even though you start with that preset, which you figured out last episode, you might want to tweak it a little bit again, right? So I'm always tweaking things. I mean, I have saved presets and plugin chains out the wazoo, but like every session I apply them, every episode, I tweak them. Literally every episode, I tweak them. A little bit here, a little bit there, because things change, So, all right. So presets are good, but then use your ears. All right, and the last one for today, manipulating an audio file. This is one of the greatest things about learning how to work with audio, is that you can manipulate an audio file in so many ways, right? You just have so many tools, so much knowledge. Like I really, I sort of have cultivated this attitude, and you should too over time, or even right now. You should cultivate an attitude of, especially if you're a podcast producer or editor, you can cultivate an attitude that's like, send me whatever files you have and I'll turn them into the highest quality professional audio possible. So basically, whatever audio you send me, I'm going to make it sound as good as possible. Now, I can't perform magic, right? If someone sends me horrific audio, I can improve it a lot, but I can't make it perfect, right? So, I don't know, just being able to manipulate audio, I love it. And I love the fact that I can record anything or people can send me anything. And there's like so many ways and so much knowledge that I have of how to manipulate the file to make it sound good. And of course, that's my business, right? As a podcast producer and a teacher as well. So, all right, well, that's it for this episode. As you know, the next episode is going to be awesome and fun. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for listening, everybody. Of course, if you ever have any questions, feel free to contact me through the website, podcastengineeringschool.com. There's a contact page. Just fill in, put in your question and submit it to me. It'd be awesome. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to even, have more content to discuss on this show. And so, I really like the fact that all of us, me and you, and all of us are upping our audio game, right? Always continually improving our audio quality. And the important thing is that we have audio quality that's way better than the average audio quality, right? Because then the listener appreciates that, even if it's subconscious. So anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next episode. Bye.